Lack of follow-through. What we've been looking at is that there's another set of influences that get in the way of positive changes as well. We might not always think of these influences because they're spiritual. Well, what the Bible would indicate is the attempt to make positive changes will be challenged by negative spiritual influences. And we've been looking at three: the devil, the world, and the sinful nature. And what we're dealing with, we're talking about tackling evil's triple threat. The world is characterized by worries, riches, and pleasures. And let's think about this morning about the world's riches. If you have your worship folder, there is a sheet in it. There's some verses listed, some points that will help us as we try to get our arms around how do we manage, what is the influence of riches, number one. We'll see that riches act like a narcotic, and they act like a god. We'll find as well that in responding to the world's riches, that we'll have to do three things: restore our confidence in God, release our worries to God, and then we'll need to remember to invest His resources with eternity in mind. Begin by thinking of the influence of riches. Begin with riches act like a narcotic. Riches act like a narcotic. Look what it says in the first verse there. The one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. I want to point out the word deceitfulness of wealth. When the Bible talks about the impact of riches or the impact of wealth, it gives it this word, deceitfulness. And here's what deceitfulness is about. It's about deception using a pleasant illusion, deception or enticement to do something that's created by using a pleasant illusion. Sometimes you might be attending some kind of concert or the air show. Some of you went to the air show yesterday, and the impact of the air show was not just to satisfy the senses, but to delight them. It was, I didn't see it, but the jets in formation I saw going over a part of Sioux Falls, it's like, oh my goodness. And when we think about deceitful, that's the sense that it has. Something that entices and delights the senses, but in so doing, creates a context in which people are prevented from doing what would be in their best interest to do. So it would be something like this, that I would be best served by doing this thing here, attending to this thing here, but deceitfulness would function in this way. When I'm trying to do this thing here, there's something so amazing happening over here that I just end up leaving that and going, wow, gosh. And in the appeal of this, the important is ignored. And that's the sense the Bible has for deceitfulness. And it's something like the influence of a narcotic. The influence of a narcotic. When you think of a narcotic can provide pain relief. Narcotics can be very powerful painkillers. Imagine somebody suffering from terminal cancer. The pain is unbearable. The influence of a narcotic can bring about the sense of pain relief. Now, when you're using a painkiller, narcotics don't treat the problem. They don't get rid of the issue that's causing the pain necessarily. What they do is make it so that the pain is brought into a tolerable or negligible limit. They are effective as painkillers. And although they don't cure the problem, they do take the edge off the pain associated with it. And riches function in the same way. They can provide pain relief. They might not be able to treat the problem all the time, but they do provide tension relief and pain relief. They can relieve pain in the lives of others. They can bring appropriate support to others. People in New Orleans are experiencing that. When money and material goods being funneled from different parts of the country coming into New Orleans. I was talking to Ann Dolge, who we made a trip last year. She made a subsequent trip and talked about the fact that there's still huge catastrophic, jaw-dropping need there. But the funneling of funds and goods to that region brings about a sense of, and appropriately so. Riches provide a sense of tension relief for us. Look at your checkbook. Is there enough for this week? If there is, there's a sense of, oh, good. There's enough in the bank. I got paid. And so I'm going to have enough to pay this bill and that bill. I'm going to have enough to be able to get what I need to get this week. Some, if you're in a position where it's payday is coming up in a week or so and you're looking at where things are and it's not looking very good, there's a sense of tension that's created. If somebody came, or if you got a check in the mail this week, it would provide, oh, gosh, good. I'm going to be able to do this, that, and the other. And in that sense, then, money and riches, they can function in the same way as a painkiller. However, narcotics, getting back to that, they can relieve pain, but what the problem with a narcotic is that it can promote addiction to pain relief. That's the danger in using narcotics, that they're addictive. And that which is used to take the edge off pain, what ends up happening, you become addicted to that, and that creates problems. It creates an addiction to the substance that in the first instance took away pain, but now you have to go back to that, and that's why narcotics are dangerous. Riches can function in that way as well. When you speak to those who are involved in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, or let's take those two for instance, what they'll tell you is that the dependence on a substance, like alcohol, say, it does two things. It provides temporary relief, but it gets in the way of developing other kinds of coping skills. For instance, if the way I deal with my tension and pain is I jump into a bottle or into a needle, two things are happening. My pain is temporarily taken away. However, I have failed at the same time to employ and develop other strategies. That's why they say somebody who becomes addicted to a mood-altering substance like alcohol when they are young, they stay stuck and frozen at a level of conflict resolution and tension relief, because in looking to the bottle to give them a sense of pain relief, other strategies weren't able to be developed. They stayed dormant. Other kinds of strategies for dealing with tension and pain remain undeveloped and not useful, because I can always fall back on this, and this is easier, so I don't have to develop anything else. Heard Mark Lordson say oftentimes, when you plug the jug, that's not when things stop being problematical. That's when the problems are still there. Now it's a matter of learning to cope with problems in a more effective way. Again, drinking is a solution. Riches can function in the same way. And it can be effective as a painkiller, but riches, we can get to a place where we become addicted to tension relief and addicted to using riches to relieve tension. And when we do so, throwing money at a problem gets in the way of developing other kinds of coping skills. We end up depending on that resource in order to bring ourselves to a place where we feel okay. Have to have money to feel okay. Again, the problem with money is that it's addictive. Rockefeller was asked, how much money does a person need to be happy? He said, a little bit more. That's the problem. A little bit more. How much money do you need to be happy? More than I have, right? How much more? See, that's a problem. With throwing money at a problem, it can promote tension relief, but then its impact is short-term. And resorting to money can get in the way of developing other kinds of skills. The Bible says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. It said, the wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it an unscalable wall. When we rely on riches, we do not have to develop a capacity to rely on God. Well, the Bible talks about riches, and that's what makes dealing with something like this, especially in this culture, very difficult. We are arguably a part of the most powerful kingdom that's ever existed. You buy that? I think we could debate that. The most affluent? I think so. I think so. I think that's probably true. And talking about riches is challenging because we are among the sixth of the world's most rich people. You say, I'm not rich, but compared with developing countries and African countries, we are in the upper sixth relative to world wealth. And we are affluent. Again, when I went to China, just because I was American, people sought me out to have me buy things because as an American, I had some money to invest in those things. We are wealthy. And that makes talking about riches challenging. I've heard that, and it was a strategy at one time, take your money and invest it this way and this way and this way, and investing your money is fine. But what I've heard was that, and it was talked to a specific individual, and they were saying, well, invest all your money, and then when you're 65, you'll be able to, or whenever you retire, then you'll be in a position where you'll give it away. And that kind of strategy, if discipline to give is not begun now, the belief that, well, I'll amass money and then when I'm 65, magically I'll turn a corner, is something like saying, okay, I'll just get addicted to heroin until I'm 65 and then I'll stop taking it. Then I'll just go off when I'm 60. Yeah, when I'm 65, I'll just stop. Well, you can't do that because there's an addiction. Heroin is an addictive substance, and riches are addictive in that way as well. Narcotics can be effective painkillers. They can, like riches, they can promote addiction to pain relief, like riches can. And narcotics can produce death, like riches can as well. There's a word that says in the Bible, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Jesus told them a parable. That's what he said. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God. And in the parable, here's what happens with this guy. That in the temporary illusion of money, a sense of, wow, look at that. Look at the crop. Look how much is there. I need to build a bigger barn because I am really in a great spot. The illusion of security was an illusion because what God said, listen, this very night your life will be demanded of you, and the way you manage these resources is not going to put you in an eternally good position, but you've put yourself in an eternally perilous position. When we focus on using riches as a means to deal with our tension, hoarding riches in order to be secure, we end up relying on something that can't secure us long-term, only short-term. And that's the problem with them. The influence of riches act like a narcotic. Riches also act like a god. Look what it says in Luke 16. No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Jesus cast riches and money as rival deities, which is really weird when you think about it. God and money, riches as rival deities, but when you think about it, it's not that much of a stretch. God promises to protect. Money promises to protect. Are you going to be in a bad way? You're going to be able to get what you need to protect you by money. It makes rival claims. God promises to provide for us, to provide what we need. Money promises to provide what we need. That's why you need a big retirement, so that it can be there to provide what you need when you get old. God demands loyalty. He says, I want you to obey me. I want you to do what I say. Money demands loyalty. It says, in order to get me, here's what you have to do. 1, 2, 3. And as with money, when you get it, you've got to guard it as well. Money has the capacity to secure the devotion of those who look to it as a source of security. That's why it's not just neutral. And the Bible would say, no, money is something, no, there's nothing wrong with money except that it's addictive. It acts like a narcotic, and that it acts like a god. It makes godlike promises to provide and protect, and it calls for godlike allegiance to it. And in that way, it's dangerous. It seems to be the deal that as relates to God and money, there are two masters. God is a master, and money is. Two masters, one Lord. No exceptions. Two masters, one Lord, no exception. It says you can't serve both God and money. Looking to be secured by money will bring you to a place where money will lead you in that direction and God will lead you in this direction. That's what it says. At some point, there will be a fork in the road. And the destination you'll take is the road that you're more confident of. That seems to be what it comes down to. Who can secure your interest? At some point, there'll be a choice. Money will say, if you're going to get me, and if I'm going to be there, and if I'm going to be able to protect and provide, you're going to have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that'll be a path you can take. God will say, okay, if you're going to look to me, you can't go in that direction because I'm calling you to go in this direction. And they will part company. That's the challenge. Two masters, two sources of provision, one Lord, no exceptions. You cannot serve both God and money. They will pull in different directions. What it says, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man as an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Greed is not a secular vice. It's a sacred one. You know what idolatry is? It's what they did, remember when they were in the wilderness, and every once in a while they would want to worship these graven images, which is really kind of ridiculous. You know, there would be these little idols that the Israelites would go to these idols and they would put them up on shelves and they would say, oh, idol, protect us. And God would say, I take offense to that. I want you to worship me and worship me only. And I asked the question for a long time, when you're reading through the Old Testament, hey, hello, hey, here's what's going to happen. It's like you want to talk to him. You know, you want to talk in, hey, you know, that little statue you're going to put up on, that thing, you're going to get fried. Don't do it. It's just a statue. I mean, what can a statue do? Sure, you can rub its belly. Maybe you put a little thing in there. It can make incense. Fine. Get incense. Don't put it in an idol. But you know what the deal with idolatry is? It's a source of security. That's what they felt. That in order to have a prosperous life, a secure life, you know what you got to do? You have to appeal to this idol, and he'll make sure you have X, Y, Z. See, God is really good if you're going through a difficult time, and God has some things he can do. The problem with idolatry wasn't that it was God or, it was God and. Sure, have God in your back pocket, but as well, have an idol on hand. I mean, what can it hurt? God's really good at leading you through the wilderness, but Baal, he was one of the idols that people liked to serve. He was really good when you were a farmer. God was good in the desert where you needed water to spring out of rocks and stuff like that. That's God's thing. But as far as farmland, Baal is the God who can help you there. That's why they wanted Baal in their back pocket too, so that they could be okay in the wilderness and in the farmland. And God took exception to that. He said, listen, I am the God of the world. I'm not just competent here, I'm competent here as well. And what God said, you cannot serve both me and Baal. Well, that's idols. That's ridiculous. Statues. You know what the Bible would indicate? Money is an idol. riches are like that statue. There's some things God can do. Yeah, if you need this or that and the other, God's really good. And here's a challenge, because we need money. But money it does have the status of being an idol. It can secure the devotion who look to it. And God said, you can't have it both ways. We look to money to provide provision, to provide for us and to secure us. And when we talk about riches, I'm not talking down to you at all. That's why I'm not going to get up here and get the big pointy finger. I'm a part of your culture too. The same thing. I deal with the issues you deal with. And I guess here's a question. How much of a threat is this really? We all know that money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is. Oh, the love of money. I like the cartoon Scrooge McDuck. Scrooge McDuck, and he's really rich. So he has a pool with coins in it. And so what he does, he's on the diving board, and he jumps on the diving board, and he plunks into this pool full of coins, and he throws them up in the air. That's the love of money. Certainly the love of money is not what we do. I don't have a pool with a bunch of coins in it. And I don't bathe in dollar bills. I wouldn't have a very good bath if I bathed in dollar bills. We get the sense to move, to love money, you have to really go in the direction of moving purposefully towards loving it. And that's not the picture. And that's the thing that's challenging about the world. As you remember the image, it says, the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and pleasures choke the word so that it doesn't bear fruit. Here's the image. It's what happened to Jesus when he spoke to a group of people as he went on his way. He was inundated by a lot of people. They were crowding around him. He couldn't move. He was inundated with requests. Jesus, do this. It would be like if you're a celebrity or you are a newsworthy person. You step out of some place and there's reporters everywhere shoving the camera in your, shoving the camera and the microphone in your face so that you can't even think. That's the image that God gives relative to the influence of worries, riches, and pleasures. You don't have to seek them. They'll seek you. When you go to a place where you have an intention to walk in the direction of God, you walk out of that place, it'll start. Influences. Come this way. Do this. It's like sometimes when you're in a car, you're dealing with kids. Mommy, I want. Okay, we'll get it in a minute. Mom, and then and then there it is. Can I have it now? 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 And finally, oh, gee whiz, Helen, give it to her. That's you cave in, and that's kind of what it's like. So, I guess what I'm saying, you don't have to purposefully go towards jumping in money. All you have to do is do nothing. Money will seek you out. Riches will seek you out. Look at this. And will lure you in that direction. Is that scary? Yeah, you know what it is. I grew up on the East Coast. There are places on the East Coast that the undertow is really bad, especially after a storm. What an undertow is, when you're in the ocean, you walk into the water, what you're aware of is that even as the water is coming in, at the level of your feet and even higher, the water is coming in this way but rushing back out to sea underneath, and you feel the pull. You feel the pull of the undertow pulling your feet out. It's dangerous in some places. That the pull can be so bad, it can suck you under the level of the water and pull you out to sea. You can't get away from it. In some places, it's very dangerous. So when you go in and you feel the pull, there's a strategy to dealing with an undertow. If you try to resist its influence and just walk back against it, it'll suck you in. What you have to do in dealing with an undertow, you don't walk away from it or in the opposite direction, you walk to the side. And then you get to a place over to the side where the pull of the undertow is not as bad. See, but you need to have a strategy. And that feels like the way it is with riches. We're going to get pulled. And we do get pulled. We're in a very affluent nation. What kind of strategy? What do we need to do? Let's talk about a couple of things. How to respond to the world's riches. Number one, restore confidence in God. Restore confidence in God. The mechanism that sets up devotion to money doesn't begin with money, it begins with worries. Look what it says. Keep your lives free from the love of money. Be content with what you have. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? It's a great verse. I'm going to read that again. But try to catch the connection between loving money and confidence in God. Look what it says. Read it again. Keep your lives free from the love of money. Be content with what you have. Why? Because it's bad? No. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So, we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Question, what's the correlation between being confident in God and loving money? What's the correlation? Seems to say, to the degree I'm confident in God, I'm confident He's my helper, He will never leave me or forsake me, I can resist the pull of money. I don't need money to protect and provide. I can use it, but I don't need to be used by it if I'm confident in God. I think that's what it says. It's a confidence issue. If I'm not confident in God, that's when I need to have it. Not just use it, have it. And it begins to be my master rather than my servant. Restore confidence in God. We've talked about Satan attacks at the level of thoughts. Listen to me. Here's where it starts to come together. You have something you don't want. You want something you don't have. It might be a thing. You want this experience, this relationship. You don't have it. You don't want this thing, this job struggle, this relationship struggle, but you do have it. And what do you end up thinking? You might be aware of it or not. Fresm. And at some level, God, why aren't you here for me? You told me you care for me, but you're not caring for me. And you say, I never think those thoughts. Yes, you do. Because Satan will make sure you think those thoughts. Here's where the battle is won or lost. Thoughts. Because if you're tagged at the level of thoughts, here's what ends up happening. Okay, I guess God must not care about me. Boy, I have a lot of problems. You have problems, I have problems. I have a lot of problems. Yeah, God says some good thing, but I'm not really confident. I've already lost the battle at the level of thoughts. I don't know that's the problem, but now I look for a source of help. Where else can I find help? Money makes a lot of promises. How's your bankroll? Hey, that's it. How's your retirement? That's it. Big retirement, provided for. I'll get both. You understand where this happened? You understand where it happened? It happened here. Question, what do you have that you don't want? What don't you want that you have? It might be things in your life. It might be behaviors. Your confidence in God is being challenged at the level of thoughts, opinions about God. That's what's in the heart. Here's my encouragement. Deal with that. And that's why I'll continue to put these things on the back, those promises. That will enable you to fight at the level of thoughts. Because if you can, at least fight at that level. You're not going to totally win, but that is the issue. And if there's a sense of growing confidence in God, then there will be the lure of don't just use money, but serve it. And you'll go, that doesn't make much sense because, I'm going to use money and I'm going to give it because it provides relief. But its usefulness is not, it doesn't do what God does. See, God will never leave me. Did you know that, by the way? Were you aware of that? God will never leave you or forsake you. Did you know that? And because God will never leave you or forsake you, how vulnerable are you really? Can we talk? How vulnerable are you really? You say, I'm pretty vulnerable. Well, God's not going to leave you or forsake you. A sense of confidence in that. You say, but isn't that? No, that's where our minds need to stay. Then when there's the, come get this. Why do I need that? I remember a friend, Chuck Anger, University of Pennsylvania. A bunch of different cult people were coming around, and he was, I don't know, the Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, somebody came to him and was trying to sell him a Jesus other than the Jesus of the Bible. And he said, hey, wait. Here's what my Jesus does. He died for my sins. He loves me. He'll provide for me in this life. Won't give me everything I want, everything I need. He'll be with me eternally in heaven afterwards, where I will be with Him, and I'll be in a place where I'll always be loved. And that is guaranteed and bulletproof. If your message can give me anything more than what I have with Him, let's have it. And the guy walked off. What can you add to that? Here's what God says to you. He'll never leave you, never forsake you. You say, but Mike, why did this happen? That's a great question. That's why we've got to base our confidence in God on what He says rather than on what we see. I see things in my life that don't look all that hot. That doesn't mean that God has abandoned me. He tells me, I'll give you what you need now. I'll give you what you want eternally. We have to base our confidence in God on the basis of what He says. That's why I've included those promises. Learn them. God, you know what? It helps me to realize what you know and who you are and how you feel and what you want. That you're in me and with me and good's ahead of me guaranteed. My confidence in you is supported by my belief that you'll keep your promises. That's number one, restore confidence in God. Secondly, release worries to God. Release worries to God. What it says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For the pagan world runs after all such things. Your Father knows that you need them. Seek His kingdom, and all these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will not be exhausted, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The Bible seems to say whatever captures your mind, captures your heart, becomes your true objective. Whatever captures your mind, captures your heart, becomes your true objective. Where's your treasure? What is it that really secures you? To the degree we grow in the understanding that God secures us, our mind will be occupied with Him and what He can provide. That means it's not that you won't function on earth, but your source of security will be clear. And a mindset on God will enable me to invest in what He tells me He wants me to do and what will happen if I do it. Bible says if we give away out of generosity what is valuable now, we'll get what is valuable then in the afterlife. If we give away what's valuable in the world's eyes now, we'll get what is valuable in eternity. If we get what's valuable now and give ourselves to getting that, and that's where our life revolves around, that's really our treasure. We give away what's valuable then. Release worries to God. And again, that's the basis of comfort. Does God care about what you eat or drink? Absolutely. Can you trust God with your worries? That's a good question, isn't it? Can you trust God with your worries? It's hard for us to. Worries are insistent. That's why restoring confidence in God's got to be first. Got to deal with that. So deal with your frustrated desires. Bring them to God. Say, God, you know what? I have something I don't want, and I want something I don't have. Deal with that. Admit it. Don't deny it. But then at the same time say, but that doesn't mean that I've been abandoned, because you're in me and with me and good's ahead of me guaranteed. And I look at what you know and who you are and how you feel and what you want, and touch both of those things. And your confidence in God will start to be restored. Then you'll be able to release your worries to Him. You see how it works? It starts with thoughts. Thoughts affect attitudes, which affect actions. Finally, remember to invest His resources with eternity in mind. Last verse, look what it says. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money, there it is a root of all kinds of evil. He goes on, command those who are rich in this present world. By the way, that's us. You say, we don't live there, but as relates to the world, we are rich. And here's what it says to people like us. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. Again, you get that? God says, never will I leave you or forsake you. Money promises not to leave or forsake, but it doesn't follow through. It's uncertain. Goes on, it says, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Here seems to be the solution in terms of responding to riches. Give attention to your confidence in God. Start to learn and understand what God says to you by way of His promises, so that you can fight off the accusations of the evil one that God's not worthy of your confidence. Restore your confidence in God. Release your worries to God. Admit what you worry, but admit as well that God is there, and tell Him about what you're dealing with. And then be open-handed with what you have. That seems to be what it says. To seek God's kingdom first means to be generous in giving what you have. That seems to be the solution biblically. There's a place where Jesus was talking about those who clean the outside of the life in Luke. They clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and things like that. And then Jesus says, here's what you should do. And what's interesting, He doesn't say, deal with your motives. He doesn't say, so if the outside is clean but the inside isn't, clean up the inside, go after your motives, make sure you're not loving money. It doesn't say that. What it says, give what is inside the dish to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. It's interesting, isn't it? What the Bible seems to indicate, hold your stuff with an open hand. Restore your confidence in God. Release your worries to God. Be generous. Be good. Invest in things that are eternal. Invest in other people. Invest in the poor. Invest in God's work. Can I give you a couple of things real quick? Number one, develop a growing capacity to do that. Whatever captures our mind, captures our heart, and captures our wallet. That seems to be the way it goes. We can't develop a giving mentality overnight. I would say develop a capacity to serve other people's interests. You say, why? Because money's going to insist that you go after it. And this is one of the things that we have to do. Restore our confidence in God, release our worries to God, develop a capacity to serve. Because your interest, as you develop a capacity to serve other people, it will safeguard you against being pulled by money. That's what it seems to say. Develop a growing capacity to serve. There's a lot of places you can do that. It doesn't need to be here. Identify parts, things that you care about. Roll up your sleeves and get involved. You say, I don't have the time. Why? Why don't you have the time? Might I suggest that you need to make the time? You say, Mike, my life is so inundated by worries and I'm busy making money and we've got to go and do pleasurable things. Worries, riches, pleasures, seductive. Seductive. Start to make time to serve. You can start here, a bunch of places. Serving isn't always fun, but it's safe to get to it. That's why they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, the way to deal with the drink problem, there's 12 steps. The 12th step, give it away. You can't live a life that's centered in on yourself. You've got to serve somebody and give it away. That's why there's 12 steps. to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and not 11. Serve. This might be a place to start. Children's ministry, different ministries here, or outside here. Get involved someplace. Develop a growing capacity. You start little, and your heart will grow over time. Start little. Start with just hit singles. Develop a growing capacity to pour your life out into the lives of other people. And you'll find that your heart will grow, and your wallet will grow, and your investment will be able to grow as well. I'm going to ask the worship team to come up now. We're going to do a closing song. Said a couple things. In terms of the influence of money, it acts like a narcotic and it acts like a god. How do you respond to it? Restore your confidence in God, number one. Secondly, release your worries to God. And finally, remember to invest with eternity in mind. As you give away, as you pour your life out, what God says, you end up pouring things into the bank of in the afternoon, 4 o'clock. We've already got like 8 people. We're going to have a great time. If you've been sitting here thinking about, I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to find out what it's about, ask a few questions, right in the library afterwards. We're going to do it again this week. You have any questions, just go right over to the library right after the service. We'll talk about it a little bit. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for your word, and thanks for telling us about things that are dangerous and seductive, and giving us a way to deal with them. As it relates to riches, I pray that you'd help us to be wise, to find a way to respond. And what that seems to mean is that we have to give attention to what is happening at the level of thoughts, our opinions about you specifically, about you. I ask that you give us a capacity to be able to both grab hold of and meditate on things you tell us about your responsiveness to us. When we look around, it's not always evident, but your word tells us that you are, and that we will eternally find that to be true. But you tell us that right now we need to grab that because it won't always appear to be so. And there's a lot of things in this world that claim to be more faithful than you are. And when we go in that direction, that's temporarily good, but eternally perilous. Would you help us to be wise, God? To fight the battle at the level of thoughts where Satan attacks by resorting to your promises, basing our confidence on what you say rather than what we see. And that as we do that, that we would be able to resist the pull, the flooding of worries and riches and pleasures so that we might be the people you want us to be. Help us to fight smarter, not necessarily harder. In Jesus' name, amen. Next.